Always have weird hair. Okay.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Board of Health. Let's call this meeting to order at 10:01 this morning. Since there was not a meeting previous to this one, I'd like to ask Commissioner Dahl to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to start off.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We try to be respectful to the public's time, and I try to stay within the time limits, but there's a lot to do at this meeting, and so it's possible we might go a little bit longer. So I appreciate your patience. This new board will impact health conditions by developing policies on the people of our community by addressing past problems in order to avoid such mistakes in the future. One thing we need to do first is an oath of office for our new members. But I don't see Commissioner Weber yet. Are you online at all, Commissioner Weber?
I have.
We have Commissioner Dahl's gonna administer the oaths of office. Thank you.
Where do you want to? Do you want to do this down here?
Mary Jane's on.
I would probably do it
Yeah.
there where you
Well, I'll
can
do.
be seen on
Lindy
the
and
camera.
Kelly down there, Mary Jane's online, so I'll just do that one through Zoom.
On, yeah. The camera's over there.
So this is Mary Jane. Can I do this online, or do I need to wait till I attend the next meeting?
I think
Online. That's my opinion also.
Okay.
I'm no Judge Bradford, but let's see, Kelly first, we'll try to do this. You raise your. I, Kelly Lane, do solemnly affirm that I will support. The Constitution of the United States. And Constitution and laws of the state of Washington. And that I will faithfully and impartially. Perform and discharge the duties of the office of Calhoun County Board of Health. According to law, to the best of my ability. I, Lindy Campbell. Do solemnly affirm. That I will support the Constitution of the United States. And Constitution and laws of the state of Washington. And that I will faithfully and impartially. Perform and discharge the duties of the. Of the office of Calhoun County Board of Health. According to law, to the best of my ability. Yeah, I got Mary Jane. She'll have to. This will be kind of different, Mary Jane, but we'll do this. I'm Mary
Right.
Jane.
I'm Mary Jane Malink.
do solemnly affirm that I will support
do solemnly affirm that I support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
and the Constitution and the laws of the state of Washington,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
and that I will faithfully and impartially
perform and discharge the duties of the office of the Cowlitz County Board of Health
perform and discharge the duties of the office of the Cowlitz County Board of Health
according to law
according to law,
and the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Dahl. So moving on to old business, I'd entertain a motion to accept and sign the minutes of the past meeting. Does anybody have a, it's been a while, it's been a couple months since the last meeting was closed, but I read them and they seem acceptable to me.
I make a motion that we accept the minutes.
Mike.
Oh,
Microphone. No, your microphone.
oh. I make a motion to accept the minutes from our last meeting of the Board of Health.
If you
I'll
want a second,
second.
you,
Motion on the floor to accept the minutes of the last meeting. Let's take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 I myself say aye. Commissioner Mortensen,
I did say aye.
I say aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Minutes have been accepted. Then just a quick update on the COVID's outdated signage. Was one of the first things that I tried to do was get rid of some of the signs that were around the building. And I'd like to say that I can cross this off the old business. The signs have been taken down. I appreciate Carol for your help with that. And it's done. So you can move on to that. Next old business would be to talk about the bylaws. The board members should all have a copy of, 2 copies of the bylaws. One is the copy that was sent out a couple weeks ago, and the second I wrote amended on there, and you can see in red writing are some of the changes. There you go. One.
Just a quick quick request for staff. Could you make sure David Berger is promoted to panelist?
This is Mary Jane. I guess that I didn't ever see comments from the county attorney. Did he ever have a chance to review and chime in?
Unfortunately, Mary Jane, I didn't know that you weren't going to be here, so I didn't send an electronic copy. All I have is the paper copy. If David Berger could maybe email that to you, because I sent it to him late last night. He has so at least you can see the same copy.
I believe I have a copyright. Kelly, I can send it to Mary Jane.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Sorry, Mary Jane, just a little bit
No.
late then.
No worries.
I can forward her what I have as well. Kelly, thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that, David. Okay, so you can see sorry, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry, my webcam wasn't plugged in. I can forward her what I have as well, what you sent me. Thank you.
I think Bailey just sent it over to Mary Jane,
Okay.
and your camera's on now too. You're working. There was lots of changes to be made, but if you look at the amended copy in red, it's highlighted in red with the track changes. The first changes come on Article 4, and well, there's a few. It's all in red. And does anybody have any questions or comments on those changes that were from input from the legal department.
So just to clarify, Mr. Chairman, those were changes directly reflecting the comments of the attorney.
Yes, correct.
So I guess my only comment would be, I'm not sure if it's a policy, but to always just email out all materials prior to the meeting so that folks have a chance to look at it.
I appreciate that. The first one, the original one, yeah, it was emailed a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
The other one.
Yeah, I got that one.
I kind of assumed everybody was going to be here, so I made paper copies, but hopefully you should have it by now. And
I do, and it looks like the attorney's comments are pretty minimal, more housekeeping kinds of things as opposed to any substantive issues.
So the attorneys did want to further look into a few sections. Though I'll just list those sections first, one at a time. Article 3, Section B and C.
It's
If
just
anybody-
awkward.
If anybody has a question or would like me to read it out loud,
Say that again.
Article
Kelly, would you
3,
say that again? Article 3.
Section B and C. Take a moment to read if you like.
So I guess my question is are we prepared to adopt these if the attorney's still taking a look at them or has some additional work to do?
I think we're pretty close to being ready to adopt them. It's been a while.
It has been a while.
And we have done many changes back and forth. Does anybody, Arn?
It's the function of the attorney is to explain to us the ramifications of our actions. It is up to us to decide what those actions are. Everything we do is a risk versus stakes kind of assessment. So the board itself can go ahead and ratify the bylaws and hopefully do so with intelligence and perspective. And it may not agree completely with the attorneys. That's always that often is the case. So we set the policy on the board, not the other way around.
The second part that was in question is Article 5C, number 4. Anybody have any comments or questions on Article 5C, number 4?
So I guess, so I feel like I'm working in the blind a little bit. And part of it's because I'm not there with you guys, and that makes it a little more awkward. But is it possible to understand or to have the attorney chime in and explain what he's uncomfortable with about 5C, number 4?
Sure, you want me to talk now?
Please.
So my concern on that one was just if found in violation of the bylaws. So I feel like there's a lot of unanswered questions about what does it mean to be in violation of the bylaws? Who's going to be determining who's in violation of the bylaws? What's the standard for having violated the bylaws? Is it a knowing standard? Does it have to be a willful violation? Is it a negligent violation? Like, did you intend to do it or not intend to do it? Or were you just careless and you didn't intend to do it, but negligent means like you didn't actually intend to violate the bylaws, but you didn't exercise the standard of care that you were supposed to, so you ended up violating the bylaws. Is there a right to a hearing before a board member would be removed for violating the bylaws? Who would the hearing be before? There's a is there a right to appeal? Is there a right to cure if you're doing something incorrectly? It's not as clear of an issue as just attendance at meetings, which is you either attended the meetings or you didn't. And I think that from a legal perspective, having if found in violation of the bylaws at this point without more and having more process spelled out leaves the county open to some kind of a wrongful termination claim if they're terminated by pursuant to that provision and there's no process set up. There needs to be procedural safeguards and I didn't see any. So that's my concern.
I would just
Thank
point
you.
out that if there was a violation of the bylaws, that any way to remove the person would actually come from a Board of Commissioners, not the Board of Health. The Board of Commissioners would take the action, and that's what it says in number 4.
Yeah, I think also, if we realize what statutes have done to us in this country, it's, we try to handle all eventualities and make the human system be just a check box. And I could go through some examples that would probably make you laugh, but that's not really necessary. My point is the Board of Health can follow a process that's very simple without having to hit every nook and cranny. So for example, suppose we decided that we didn't want a member of the board any longer. We felt that board member was counterproductive in some way against the oath of office. You basically name it. What we would do is not just peremptorily act on it like children and just go off. We would discuss that. We would go get attorney recommendation the same way we currently do any discussion about termination of an employee or anything like that. So we all know that no matter what it is we do, the way the laws are structured, we are subject to a suit. To try and cover every circumstance at this point doesn't make any sense to me. Common sense makes more sense to me. So I would leave it as it is.
The next,
Can I make a comment about something that was earlier that already was earlier above in the bylaws? That it
Please.
doesn't look like it was changed from what I had recommended. It does come later as well. It's from it comes in the Article 8 and in
yeah, Article 8, that's the next one I was going to bring up.
okay, you can talk about it. I'm gonna find the other part earlier up higher up. Sorry.
Did you say go ahead and move on to that
Yeah,
Article 8?
you can, and then when I make a comment about Article 8, I'll bring up my point about what was earlier.
No, please go ahead. Go ahead and proceed.
Okay, yeah, I'm just sorry, the font is small on my computer and I'm trying to see it. So the overall concern I had was about the fiduciary obligation. So if you look at Article 3 membership, Article 3 B1 and B3 and C. So, you know, big picture, the Board of Health is a creature created by state law, and you have like an enabling act that created the Board of Health. And it sets up, you know, what the non-elected positions are. And the state law provided that only, it had the representatives of public health agencies, the consumers of public health services, and then other community stakeholders. And in the state law, it only provided that the consumers of public health services member may not have any fiduciary obligation to a health facility or other health agency, and may not have a material financial interest in the rendering of health services. So I think the intent behind that was the person who's representing the public health agencies can have a fiduciary obligation of some kind or a financial interest in a health organization, and so can the other community stakeholders. But the consumers of public health services, that position, this state legislature did not want that person to have any financial interest in the rendering of health services, so that they're strictly a consumer. And if you are you can't be more strict in saying that every single person who's on the Board of Health can't have any financial interest in medical services. Because if you do that, it's inconsistent with state law, and you're excluding individuals who are entitled under state law to be board members. So you can't categorically exclude people that are allowed to be on the board. Does that make sense? So that comes in Article 3, and that also applies to the tribal member, and then it's in the Article 8, the conflict of interest provision. So to the extent that those provisions are inconsistent with my comments, I wouldn't recommend them.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
I am reminded frequently by any number of people and circumstances that certainly in the county, I'm an interloper, and certainly in terms of politics, I'm an interloper. When I first came on board, some of the things I looked at, some of the contracts were just utterly appalling. And I've been struggling with that ever since. I've been a longtime observer of various advisory committees, and I think advice from the public, as is evidenced by the public attendance, is really important. But we've missed a pretty interesting aspect of participation. The reason I vote to put someone on an advisory committee is not because they have an axe to grind or can benefit from the committee, but because they have some kind of expertise. But all too frequently, and I could go through examples, we seem to ignore that. And what we have in our legal system is a legal system prepared by legal people for the benefit of legal people. You cannot contest anything if you're not a member of the bar. You all have to be a member of the bar. If you object, you go before a judge, and the judge is a member of the bar. And if you don't like the judge, you go before another judge. It's way too incestuous. So in this case, it is my belief that it makes sense to get people who are no longer involved in any way with the system that is a current fiduciary system. I realize that that's contrary to what our attorney would like, but it is time for us to take a gift given to us in terms of a Board of Health with population of the Board of Health coming from the citizens, to be sure that we are properly representing the citizens and not a system or a status quo that has been assumed and accepted. So my stance is on it. The way you have it I would leave it alone.
And it was done to be fair. in my opinion.
May I just make a comment by reading? I haven't read all of this until today, but it seems like Article 8 kind of covers any conflict of interest or potential for abuse of the position that would get away from all this other language, although, it's kind of hard for me to understand some of this. It seems like it's kind of redundant. Is that wrong?
No, sometimes you don't know whether it's intentionally obtuse or not. It is, we've been advised any number of times from some of our elected representatives that the RCWs are pretty much important. I've had conversation with some of the representatives saying that they do not recognize the outcome of an RCW when it goes through the agencies that produce the administrative codes out of it. And administrative codes are a dangerous thing. So I'm not at all swayed by administrative code there. If you look at the history of the health system, it is one that continues to grow and defend itself because it's for your health. How can you object? That would be terrible. How could you object to such a good concept?
I just want to make a comment to address Arn's comments, not this last one, but the one he made before Lindy Campbell gave her comments. Just to clarify, he had said something about what our attorney would like, and I'm not, I don't have a personal policy stake in any of this. I'm just making neutral legal recommendations based on what state law is and what the legal recommendation for what is in the bylaws. So it's not a personal thing for me. And I just wanted to highlight that by just as an example of, if you move forward with the bylaws as they are, for example, with the representative who would represent the public health agency, and they shall have no material financial interest in the rendering of financial health services. So that would prohibit, if there's like a current doctor who's employed in the county, who's, paid. So say there's like a Kaiser doctor or some, whoever who's employed, they wouldn't be able to be a BOH member. And I'm not sure about like the exact ramifications, but I guess you could make an argument that say you have a big stake and say you're retired, even you're retired from medicine, and you own a bunch of stock in some medical company, you could arguably have a material financial interest. So that could be some of the ramifications for moving forward the way that you are.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to address that. One, you're spot on in the issue regarding you from a personal standpoint. I wouldn't dare address that in a personal way. I have actually spoken publicly frequently that I think we have a very good legal department. So I have no concerns there. I have not even a scintilla of thought that somehow you're going to go down to the bank now for some reason. We are all members of what I consider a system that is rigged against the public. And that's why I was addressing it like that, categorically. As to a doctor, one of the magic things about a lot of volunteer people is that they don't have to be on the board to help us understand an issue. And the board can reach for any doctor and even offer to pay them something, provided the BOCC agrees. But what is important in this is we do not want someone on the board who actually has to cast a vote where there may be a semblance of conflict of interest. Now, conflict of interest is really interesting. Sometimes people think it has to be where somebody puts $1 in their pocket in some way, or insider trading or something like that. It can be a variety of things. Even the most elemental one is, and we hear it often, well, you can't understand how I feel because you haven't lost a child or something like that. I mean, just our life circumstances put a set of blinders on us in a way that we don't even realize. So that's kind of the thing. And I bumped into that on sitting in this chair for other purposes. And I had a third item and I get old man tremors and I cannot read my handwriting.
I
would
have a
just-
question.
Please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I guess my question is for the attorney. What your concern is that the part about the fiduciary issue is inconsistent with state law, or is it inconsistent with the RCWs?
So you said a couple things there. I'll just address the last one first. So the RCWs are the statutes and the administrative provisions would be the WACs, so
Okay.
there's the Washington Administrative Code, the WACs, and then there's the RCWs, Revised Code of Washington. The WACs are like are regulations, and the RCWs are the statutes that the legislature
Okay.
passes. And the comment that I was making was that, yes, if you put the fiduciary obligation on the public health facilities position and the other community stakeholders and the tribal representative, then that is inconsistent with the RCWs. RCW 70.04 point, I think it's 030. I'd have to double check. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Yep.
I'd just like to say too, thank you very much, David, for your help on this. He has provided a lot of good help and we've come a long way. The proposed amended draft here has come a long way from all these pages that we went through before. And I appreciate your good help with and advice on that.
Thanks, Kelly. I appreciated all your questions and working with me. Thank you.
Thank you.
I-
Anybody?
I'd like to throw out another element of argument that might help people feel a little more comfortable. For months, we sat here under the edict of you must have a mask. You must demand the people to be masked. We did not do that. And that was, I think, a very important part of what I consider trying to move a system back to the autonomy of the people. And so here I look at it the same way there. Now, when we go to vote here on the board, we will come to a conclusion of whether that's a valid argument or not, as seen by the board. I have no problem with that.
Yeah. Arndt touches on an issue that I have with this whole thing. If you read at the very top, the powers and duties, it gives Cowles County Board of Health will have supervision over all matters pertaining to the preservation of life and health of the people within its jurisdiction, and then enforce it through the local health officer or administrative officer appointed under an RCW, the public health statutes of the state and rules. So we're under the rule of the state Board of Health and the Secretary of Health. And that just really grates on me. Our job isn't to rule the people. Our job is to free the people and let them make their own decisions. So to have when they pass laws that restrict people's freedoms, I don't even think they're valid in my mind. It violates what people just took oath on, the Constitution of the United States. It doesn't give you the ability to take people's rights. Your rights don't come from the State Board of Health or the Secretary of Health. You have the right to make those decisions. So this first part of it really, really grates on me, and I'm going to struggle with this because I'm not here to take rights. And I realize our people in our county, I haven't seen where they've been imposing or been draconian, but they have the power to be, and you get the wrong person in there and So I struggle with this.
And I appreciate that, Commissioner. You've mentioned that before, and I too am not a big fan of it. However, that is the law, the RCW, and that's how it was written. It was basically cut and pasted right from the law. So I sympathize with you and I agree, but that was the better choice, actually, from what it was previously.
If I could add, there are so many built-in assumptions on everything, but let me first say, I agree with you. Agree with Commissioner Dahl. We're in a system that I just spoke about earlier that is not favorable to the public in the manner in which this country was built to start with. And so how can we improve it? Can we improve it all in one day? The answer is not a chance. We didn't get into this mess
I lost them.
except over hundreds of years, well, 1.5 years. And so in the position both as Board of Health and the Board of County Commissioners, you end up having to do triage. Which battles are worth fighting for? And that is a judgment call. If we do not approve the bylaws, it'll be more complicated for us to stand a uniform ground, even though, anyhow, there was something else, but again, my scratchy handwriting.
I would just add too, that included in these bylaws, they can be amended at any time during another meeting. And in fact, David Berger had told me that eventually, depending on how circumstances develop, with other board members potentially coming on, we will have to amend them later on anyways.
The thing I like about that, it uses human this decision thinking processing at the time. I think in the position where you get more power, you have to be careful what you do and how you say it. And one of the biggest dangers or violations for me is to try and enforce your view, not allowing an escape window for the future. So I like to being able to negotiate. I could tell you a story about that, but I won't.
It feels like you've been banished to the far end
No.
because there's nobody in between.
And we miss you, Mary Jane.
That's been my life for at least half a dozen years.
I'm just teasing you, but.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, no.
So
You know what, and I agree with, you have to do triage, but I can just tell you that whatever situation we look at is going to come from the public side. And it's real dangerous to me to put power in people that are out of reach of the public, meaning they can't vote them out or they can't do other things. So we just have to be careful with that when we deal with stuff.
any other comments? If not, I'd entertain a motion to accept these and knowing that they can be changed and amended later on.
I'll go ahead and move that we adopt your amended bylaws, and I think it's clear which bylaws those are, but
It's the one that says amended on it and there's some
Right.
red
yeah.
writing.
I make a motion. Oh,
The
you did that.
motion's been,
I
Yeah.
second that. I second that.
okay, a motion on the floor to accept the amended bylaws of Cowlitz County Board of Health. Further discussion?
So this is Mary Jane again. I just, at this point, I'm not comfortable supporting it. And only because the the county attorney has raised some, I think, some legitimate issues. And I know we have discussed them at length. But I don't know why we run the bylaws past the attorneys if we're not going to listen to their best advice. Then they don't necessarily have a dog in the fight. So at this point, I will not support adopting the current bylaws.
So remember, you started out, they're two distinct functions completely. And there unfortunately is not a clear line between between a policy issue and the advisory issue. But you did remind me of the one I had forgotten, and unfortunately, trying to address the issue you brought up, and never mind, the Board of Health will ignore the senile person, right?
It's not in the bylaws, but
No,
um,
which bylaw? No, never mind.
Well, Mary Jane, I just wanted to assure you that we can come back and look at these again and have a more, a further discussion, I should say, if we wish as a board. Like you said, you can amend that and maybe we'll have time to discuss that at the next meeting. But I would like to move ahead and do, well,
I remember.
Please.
1803, Marbury versus
Madison.
Madison. The core of that decision is in a word or two, which is, well, a sentence or two, which basically says a law repugnant to the Constitution is not law. We have long since forgotten. And in my harangue about the earlier issue about a system, we have a system where the people are not supposed to interpret the Constitution. Only the legitimate anointed ones are to apply the Constitution. I've rejected that because I think the Constitution is a pretty small pamphlet. We can all read that. We can all decide. And therefore, even though it is really ingrained in us as a law-abiding people, we have to ask what the origin of the law is to make sure we're doing the right thing.
And I'd further to that and to the public, one article, the last article, Article 10, is something that I added into, and I'll just read it. It's constitutionality. The Cowlitz County Board of Health shall pass no rules or regulations that are contrary to the state or federal constitution. And that's the end of the document. Well, that gives a lot of protection, I think, as well.
I like that. I appreciate it.
Would anybody else have comments
well,
on the bylaws?
I just want to ask one more question. So there's nothing that has been changed that it goes against the law, RCW, correct? Or is our attorney telling us that it doesn't meet the letter of the law? I'm a little confused.
It's kind of added is what it is. It's the,
Okay, does it break a law? Does it,
When,
negate a law?
when you're driving 75 on the freeway, are you breaking the law? I mean,
My comments earlier were that, yeah, this is not, parts of this are not compatible with state law.
And I do appreciate the fact that we have been in business since June and we are still wrestling with the bylaws. But I guess part of my concern is that I feel like we should, and even though I understand that we can amend them as time goes by, I'm not comfortable passing or supporting the bylaws when we know, when we're hearing from our legal representation that they're inconsistent or incompatible with state law. My voice is gone again.
well, from my dealing with it, in actuality, all we did was add the fiduciary responsibility to make it fair that all board members have no fiduciary responsibility. Previously, it was written as only one of the members has no fiduciary responsibility. When I first came across that, it looked to me like somebody in Olympia forgot the other two, where, and I appreciate David Berger's comments that it is not in the RCW to add a fiduciary responsibility to the other members. However, in fairness, to have the board have no fiduciary responsibility to a healthcare agency seems, for the Board of Health specifically, like a very fair and proper idea. So there's a motion on the floor to accept that. Is there any further discussion? Then I'd like to go ahead and call for a vote. Those in favor of accepting the bylaws as amended, say aye.
Aye.
I'd like to abstain because I'd like to talk to the attorney more. I'm sorry.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Mary Jane,
No, I don't. I vote no.
opposed? So that's 3 ayes, 1 abstention, and 1 no. That shows the bylaws, that motion carries. Okay, moving on. That one was a big one. So thank you all for your patience. It's been a lot of work back and forth, and now at least we have something to move forward on. Okay, so now actually off of the old business, hallelujah. Going to new business, can I call the staff up to take your positions? On the agenda, it says that HHS is going to discuss the Healthy Youth Survey. Unfortunately, that was my mistake, that was going to be put on to the next meeting. And right now, they would like to discuss the RV. There's some codes related to RV parks and campgrounds. And Gina is here to discuss that with us.
Oh, geez.
Are you able to email this to email it to Mary Jane? Or does she already have it?
Is it part of the agenda package?
It's not, and we can send it out
Oh,
to you, Mary
okay.
Jane. It'll probably be after the meeting though. And what I want to make sure we're going to
Okay.
do just a really brief overview right now of a code that has some upcoming changes. And then our intent is to have the board members be able to review the old code with the draft new code, and then we'll circle back for further discussion. So we're just
Thank
doing a
you.
high level overview today.
That works.
These slides will be presented on the screen shared.
We just brought the paper copies of the slides today.
Okay.
From my understanding, it's not going to require a vote. It's just an overview discussion at this point.
Right, just some brief information.
Okay.
You may need to be more explicit than usual
Okay,
because a lot of people won't be able to see the slide.
sure. I think we have extra copies for members in the public, and
Okay.
Okay.
we'll get a copy to the clerk so she can submit it with the meeting documents.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have Susan Long here today, our environmental health manager, and she's going to talk through our item for today.
I'm good, thanks.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. So today I'm going to talk to you about general sanitation requirements for Cowlitz County campgrounds. Just some brief background on our campground facilities. We permit 29 campground facilities in the county. They range in size between 2 and 199 spaces. The medium number of spaces is 46. The medium year when they were constructed was 1972. There are 23 that operate year-round, and there are 6 that operate seasonally. So why are we developing the general sanitation requirements for Cowlitz County campgrounds? Cowlitz County actually currently does have a campground and recreational facilities code. It's Cowlitz County Code 1856. It was codified in 1998, so it is quite old, and it does have some limitations. The major limitation that it has
I'd
right now.
appreciate it if you didn't remark about old. It kind of makes me feel uncomfortable. You're worthless, does it?
Fair enough, sir, fair enough. My apologies. So the existing code has a combination of health codes and development standards, which makes compliance and enforcement challenging. The existing code also doesn't have a fast track path for folks who want to add spaces to their existing park. You really have to go through the permitting process essentially from the beginning. It also has limitations on the minimum lot size you can develop a park on. So right now it's a 2-acre minimum. And we do have about one pre-application meeting scheduled a month for folks interested in developing this sort of site on their property. So there is a pretty high interest from the community in this sort of development. So the goal for this code is to really separate out 1856 and make 2 standalone codes. So the one would have health code standards, which would clarify authority and responsibility. The second would be the planning code, development code, which would kind of rectify some of those issues that I previously mentioned, the limitations in the previous code. So where we currently stand with the codes, Building and Planning has been doing outreach on this code revision since fall of 2021. They completed their SEPA in February of 2022. During that process, their code was sent out to RV park and campground owners, as well as members of the public. They were allowed a 2-week comment period. Planning did not receive any comments with their proposed code. And in October of 2022, the Planning Commission did approve their draft version. The health code, our SEPA was complete in November of 2022. Again, our draft code was sent out to RV park and campground owners along with members of the public. They were allowed a 2-week comment period. We did not receive any comments for our version of the draft code. Right now, the general sanitation requirements for Cowlitz County campgrounds is drafted and ready for review from the Board of Health. In your packet, like Gina mentioned, there is a copy of the draft version as well as the current code. Next steps, once the Board of Health is satisfied with the version, we would schedule a public hearing and repeal and replace the existing code. On that same day, planning would also schedule a meeting with the Board of County Commissioners to adopt their version of the code. So these really are not standalone codes. They really need to be adopted on the same day, just to make sure there's not a lapse in oversight. So that's.
For those of us who are not familiar with the old code or this new one, can you briefly touch on a couple of the points?
So for the health code, there's not a lot of changes. They're all fairly minor. One of the biggest changes is we are no longer going to do an annual operating permit. That's been challenging in the past. It's under Building and Planning Director authority currently in the current version. The PA's office has asked us to step away from that and just really focus on inspections and making sure facilities are compliant through inspection based.
So does that mean they wouldn't have no more permits?
They would not have an annual operating permit, no. They would basically get approval and then we would do annual inspections to make sure that they are still in compliance with the code.
So the problem we're trying to solve is one that you've seen in your job as a material problem, or this is an administrative problem?
It's both. So for the planning side, there's definitely some limitations on development. So I think in their new version, they're going to go down to a 1/2 acre if that gets approved, as well as allow small expansions for existing parks going through an administrative process instead of the hearings examiner. For the health side.
Okay, I
Oh.
don't need you to repeat what you did
Oh.
before, but just to say, what was the problem categorically like?
Categorically, the current code there's some authority that falls under the Building and Planning Director and some that falls under the health officer. And the PA's office said that we really need to separate the two, that they're two distinct authorities and they need to be separated.
Okay, and then I asked, in your experience, did that manifest itself in a way that you saw does cause a problem?
For the annual operating permit, for facilities that have had trouble with compliance, we were never going to pull a permit. We weren't going to close any parks down. It wasn't an appropriate way to administer enforcement.
Okay, and if I were in the public, I would have noticed this?
I guess if you lived at one of these parks, you may have noticed.
No, I
it.
mean, in my normal outdoorsy adventures, would I have been hampered in some way? And I'll be less encumbered. So I'm looking, even though I think it's a good change, I'm not trying to argue against that. I want to relate that to some physical imperative from the perspective of the public.
If I'm understanding you correctly, I think if you were to visit one of these parks and they weren't in compliance, you might see, for example, overflowing trash bins or bathroom facilities that aren't up to standards. So in that way, you would be encumbered, I suppose. as a
So
member of
can
the
I
public.
infer from that, that after we pass this, there will be no overflowing trash bins?
I cannot guarantee that, but I will definitely have a mechanism for enforcement.
Okay. You see what I'm driving at? It's,
I
okay,
believe so, sir.
all right.
And I'd just like to ask, is it possible to come up with some kind of a, from what I'm understanding, it's two different authorities and you want to combine it into under one?
The opposite. So it's
Or-
under one authority right now, and we want to segregate
Separate.
out the health from development standards. So
Is there a way you can just list briefly those separations?
I don't have that information today, but I can certainly bring like a chart during our next meeting.
I think that might be helpful, at least to me.
Absolutely.
Will there still be a need for communication between the two entities?
Yeah, we will work closely with building and planning because if there is, for example, if we see, we call this creep, if people are adding sites that they haven't been permitted for, we would let building and planning know because that's really a land use issue at that point.
Okay, thank you.
What defines a recreational vehicle park? I mean, what's the scope of this? Is this, would this, like out in Lexington, they're talking about that recreational vehicle thing?
So
off to
if
the
you.
side, does that come under this or what?
So
what's
if you look at the draft version in the definition section, it talks about what a constructed campground is, what camping units are, and a camping space. So it does try to define what that looks like. It's on number 34 and number 36.
So does that development they're talking about out in Lexington, does that fit under this? I haven't seen the specs on that.
I mean, if there are RV sites or camping spaces, that would fit under this, yes.
You're asking about this specific RV park that has been in the news for a while?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just trying to see where the scope, I mean, I see RVs in different places. I mean, can a landowner set up 3 spots and he has a fishing hole and then come and do it or? Figure how broad this gets.
Yeah, and I'd say too, I have a RV in my driveway. Would that be affected?
So I believe in the planning code, it talks about you can have 2 additional living units on your property. So you could have 2 RV spots on your property that would be exempt from this. Anything over that would be considered an RV park.
And would those 2 spots that you have on your property have to go through the permitting and these processes?
They would be exempt. So
So-
two or less would be exempt. More than 2 would fall under this code.
So this group of papers, 18.56, is that before or after
This is the current code that's on the books.
the current code?
This is.
The young code from 98.
Okay, and we plan on keeping that? as
No,
is?
that would go away. I think building and planning would retain that code number, but it would only have development standards. And then the general sanitation requirements would be a new code.
Okay, so we don't have here we have the draft of some aspect of the new code, but not the entire draft proposal.
That would be the health standards is what
Okay,
you
so-
have.
Okay.
So we would expect a red line document
Or something.
at some point?
I'd say it's challenging because it's one code being repealed and replaced with two different codes. So a red line version may be difficult because of that. Does that make sense?
So maybe a comparison, that's what I was asking earlier, for some kind of a comparison, so this is the old, this is what the new would look like.
Well, I think in terms of a red line, I would look for this code. This I'm holding up as 1856, the other current code. I would look to see a red line copy of this, which would feed into either a new 18.56 or a new 18.xx, something like that. And this current thing will be repealed.
Yeah,
But,
okay.
but
And we-
the issue is, we need to see a red line of this. And the public will need to see this. I assume we'll post this on the website someplace.
I'm not sure how that works with draft code changes.
Okay, we'll work with the clerk of the board
Sure.
for that.
Yeah, and we will have to have a public hearing. So we're kind of, in the early phases. So we'll get some more clarification and work with building and planning on their code revisions, our code, and how we can best portray that, what the changes are from the old code to the new. And at some point, we will have a public hearing.
What you're doing here is wonderful. What I'm trying to do is get us and the public as much advance notice. So when they complain to me that they haven't seen it, I say it's been on there for 6 weeks, not 2 weeks,
Sure,
that kind of thing.
absolutely.
Okay, so any further discussion on the RV parks? I say we'll keep this on the agenda and look for a chart to come with redlining or some differences.
Yes. We would like to, as we mentioned, we provided a draft of the new code. We'd love to have time at a future meeting to come back and kind of review further those changes and have discussion about the code revision.
And one famous last words, one final question. There's no time constraint under which you're operating?
I mean, there really isn't, but I know building and planning is anxious to get this
The
moving
sooner you
forward.
can clean it up, the better, but
Yeah,
you're not going to lose anything if it's a
no,
month or 2 months.
no.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Moving on. Next item of business is, I'd like to establish a Board of Health committee, a new committee that would be a policy review committee. This be something we've talked about, children's mental health, and we've talked about campaigns of anti-drug or drug awareness campaigns and cannabis, vaping, tobacco. We've talked about this previously, and this committee that I would like to establish would be able to do that, work on some campaigns, and to also, as well as help develop website content. Does anybody have anything to say about establishing a committee?
Are you asking the public or us?
Well, I'm just asking if anybody has any comments. There'll be a lot more work to do after the committee meets and all that, and there'll be lots of public input. We would welcome it and actually want public input from that.
I'd like to squeeze you a little bit, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
The question was, are you inviting public comment also? And that's a yes or a no answer.
Oh, yes, if anybody would like to comment on that,
Okay, thank you.
Can I have a question, Kelly?
please.
Is this committee going to have staff support?
I'm not sure what you mean by staff support.
So are you gonna say to, or the committee say to the health board, pull us everything that you can get for, as far as local information on mental health in our communities, and, or are you looking for committee members to do the legwork? And are you gonna ask the Board of Health staff to help put together an agenda, help provide some recommendations, help provide supporting documentation, walk us, because they tend to have more expertise in that area, walk us through some of the more technical pieces? Or are you gonna, or is your vision to put a handful of people together and they need to do all that themselves? That's what I mean by staff support.
I think that the committee would be reporting to the Board of Health, so it would have all of our staff available.
And I think we're looking for ideas. I think we're looking for concepts, and we were talking about a slogan campaign for certain things, and we need input. Kelly and I and our board, I don't think we just are, and that's not one of my expertises. So I'd love people that are creative, that can think about ways to promote things, messaging to the community that's positive and supportive of health. And we were trying to decide, we were thinking we were going to be the committee, and it wasn't going very well because it's just him and I. We needed more people. We'd love people on the board too, but we'd love input from you folks in the community, because I think there's a lot of creative and knowledgeable people that could put together really amazing things. And we would like to submit them. I think we have found that the health department has been very helpful sitting down and talking to us about focuses of issues, especially with the youth survey. And they have some really good ideas. They have some really good ideas, but they haven't been able to really enact them. And there's actually money available to do this community messaging and just advertisement of good health and good behavior and whatever. They had some really, we have a lot of good resources out there. So I think the committee is sort of in a formation state, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Just right now, just starting to establish it. And Mary Jane, you would be more than welcome to be part of that committee if you like. Any of the board, and as well as some people in the public,
Yes.
we welcome
You know,
everybody.
I'm a little bit like Lindy. I think that there are people out there that are, whoops, low battery. People out there who are way better at that kind of stuff than I am. And so I guess it would be nice to have members of the public and perhaps some representation from the schools, because they're the folks who know who are creative and energy filled.
So then I hear no objection to the committee, and we have,
Well, if I may, Mary Jane asked a whole bunch of questions, and
I did. Sorry about that.
oh, no, not a problem. Those are all good questions. I think the answer is, for me, all of the above. But implicitly, you bring up an issue of usage of the resources, and that one I will probably need David's advice on this, because I have heard, and I just don't know what is the right stuff. This board right here could decide that HHS will jump and do handstands across the room, but it's not, I'm told that would not be legitimate. Only the Board of County Commissioners can do that. So the right process would be the Board of Health says, we have a resolution to ask the Board of County Commissioners to do X, Y, Z, and then the Board of County Commissioners would have to act on that. I think that's probably how we should do it. The thing that makes this strange is that the Board of County Commissioners is on the Board of Health. So I think I would look for simplification, but I've already given David a bad enough time, so I look for his guidance here.
Thank you, Lauren. Yeah, I think you're correct that the decision would be made from the Board of County Commissioners about staffing. Functionally, yeah, it's a little awkward since the BOCC is on the BOH, but yes, technically you're correct that it needs to be a decision of the BOCC.
Do we have to be to be technical, or can we do something like if the Board of Health proposes something to use resources and all Golden County commissioners say, yeah, I'm for it. Can we take that and go with that, or is a formalization under all circumstances really the right thing to do, such that in review 5 years from now, the citizens can see exactly what happened?
I feel, I guess I can give you a tentative answer. I'd probably want to bounce it off of Doug, but I think it would probably need to be in a BOCC meeting, but for the actual decision, since it is directly related to county staff in it, but there are examples of, the state law for the BOH says that for like setting rates on or fees or permit fees, that only the voting, like the elected members, the BOCC members shall vote on that. So I'm not sure if there would be a workaround. I would say tentatively no, but let me chat with Doug later. He's out of the office right now, but I would say probably needs to be BOCC separately.
I'm okay with that, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I know it's cumbersome, but I like the actual decision to be in the arena where people have some recourse if they don't like it.
And we might get more public attendance at the regular Tuesday meeting.
Okay, so therefore I'd like to establish a policy review committee. I've spoken with a person who's interested in the position and who's very smart, is very well-versed in RCW codes and capable. And I'd like to say that Mr. Dennis Ott would be the chairperson of this committee. And we look forward to having some good things produced out of that committee. We have someone from the public here that would like to speak. You just touch your microphone.
Angle it up a little bit.
There you go.
That's good.
There, it's on now. Anyway, following up with your questions, so, because there's a lot of information that I have, like screenshots and things of very serious stuff. And I was just wondering, do I just share it like with you guys or what? Like, because you're talking about having, different other people. But anyway, I was just wondering how I would go about sharing it with you. Like, do I have to be part of the group or just can it be public comment?
Please feel free if you want to comment now, but otherwise. to
Oh, honey,
share-
I can't comment right now.
Oh,
I've
no.
got like 100 pictures.
To share with the board, how does that work if public has screenshots and things like that they'd like to present?
I wouldn't give a categoric answer because I'm not sure what would be right, but I always would start with going through the chairman.
Yeah, I'd be willing to look at everything, anything. and
Okay, because
everything.
that's what I'll do then is when I can get you together, or one and then together. Anyway, I can show you what I have and we can start from there. But in this morning, because I watch my news in the morning, it doesn't get done till 9, but I try to make it. But anyway, this morning when I was going through some of my other news, some other stuff showed up and it just broke my heart of like, I don't know if it was an aborted baby or what, but it was like a gallon, like a paint bucket. And this doctor was by this baby and it's horrific. And I don't know if it was caused by that freaking jab or both, maybe that and a partial abortion or something, that it was a horrific sight. And I don't know how he managed to get through sharing that, 3-minute video, but I was so glad because that's the first one I've seen like that. And you can't help, but it just breaks your heart. And anyway, and then with the kids and their mental health, these kids are like, they don't want to go to school. Some of them, their parents drop them off and they'll leave school. And then like some of them, the people I know, like the mother will go, yeah, I found out my son didn't go to school. And then I'm like, well, now wait a minute. So you dropped him off and he went home. But I says, did he tell you why? And my granddaughter also, she doesn't, one of them, like they got a hold of my younger granddaughter, kind of are messing with her, like, are you a boy or a girl? Then the 16-year-old now, she's like, I'm tired of the school forcing me into being something I am not born to be. And I haven't even seen them now for like a year, and they're in town. And it just, when it's your own grandchildren, or your children that are telling you, I don't want to go to school because I'm not learning. And when you talk to somebody that's like 20 years old, have you learned history, Washington State history and things like that? And all these programs that are getting kids rushed through school and they graduate and they don't have a brain. It's like, and I see this news and there'll be a guy out saying, okay, and he's like at a college campus. And he goes, do you know like what country the Queen of England's from? No. And other things anyway, it's just common sense that they're not teaching kids that in any education system. And I tell people, homeschool your children, or, even some churches, but you got to be careful because some churches now are breaking up, they're splitting up because they want to introduce the LGBTQ, and that's against God. Anyway, I've got my Bible well marked, trust me. But
Yeah,
anyway, I thank you.
If I could interrupt you, yeah, or Mr. Chairman, one of the things I've found, and I have mentioned earlier that our system is really lacking in a lot of places. We can't tackle it all at one time. We really should stay focused on, in this case, specifics that the Board of Health can do. And for that, we would thank you tremendously to bring up an element that we could tackle, but not go off on the other 100 elements, which we know are there, but we can't do anything about at the moment. Remember, we talked about triage earlier. It's that we've got to stay focused or we won't accomplish anything.
Are you squeezing me, Arn? I got you. Anyway,
Yes.
I get your point and I appreciate that. So thank you for your time and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks,
And I
Rose.
just say that some of the points that you brought up could be addressed in the committee. One thing about the children not wanting to go to school, the Healthy Youth Survey that we reviewed at the last meeting said the number one, I want to make sure everybody knows that the number one cause of death of children in Washington State is suicide. So we need to address that, and that's an important topic for me.
Thank you.
So thank you for your
Thank
input.
you.
You're welcome.
In the spirit of that, I move to go to the one last or two more quick points if nobody's. Somebody have their hand up?
I think Rob wanted to speak.
Oh, please.
Is this a citizen comment time?
Please go ahead.
Okay. Does this board have any influence by decree or recommendation to healthcare facilities in the county that are requiring masks, and also to remove any signage regarding this fake COVID-19 pandemic?
I would say that the Board of Health does oversee things that have to do with health. And that specific issue is something I would like to bring up to in the committee to talk about that as well. Because yes, everybody else, the no masks are not required anywhere else, but in certain circumstances here. And I think maybe those policies should be reviewed.
Okay, thank you very much. When I go to a doctor's office or other healthcare facility, frequently even the staff members are wearing their silly mask down below their nose. And, they realize it's a bunch of baloney as well. So.
And I'd add to that, that I have heard several instances where people are not going to the doctor and not going to get the proper care because of something like that.
I know that as well. I have a friend that lives in Pacific County who is disabled and she needs to see a doctor, but she refuses to because she cannot comply with the mask mandate.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
The only thing I ever say about those things, if you're talking about a government building or something, we probably have some control over that. I'm reluctant to tell private enterprise how to act. I agree with you. And if there's something we can do that gives them some comfort in stopping some stuff that they think is not right, then I'm more than happy to look at that. But I typically don't get into telling private enterprise how to act, though I totally agree that I think it's unnecessary.
Hey, Arn, with your experience, do you have any input about that? How any kind of influence, not strong arming, but discussing it with those members that are providers? Is that anything the Board of Health could just approach and say, tell us what you're thinking? Or, I mean, is it a waste of time?
Communication is never a waste of time, but it may be low yield at times. Particularly when we have, as I've mentioned again, harping on the system, we have a very convoluted system. You may go to a service provider and say, we don't think you ought to ask for your customers to wear a mask. And they'll say, well, if we don't do that, we subject ourselves to problems with our licenses, our insurances, and any other edicts that come down the line. Our facility is staffed by doctors who are members of the AMA. What happens if our AMA memberships are taken away? That's kind of why you'll always hear me harping, trying to simplify things, why I like what the HHS team is doing, separating 18.56 into 2. It's just, let's get it clearer what the functioning elements are. Here, I think everything that Commissioner Dahl said is spot on. If we can go and mandate something to a private enterprise, we're just as bad as what we're trying to do anyhow. And what we can do to them can be done to us.
Mhm.
So I have a small, well, it's important issue, I think. It may be small, but it's important. In the spirit of good mental health, I believe that we need more American patriotism in our institutions. Many people who come into our local health department often come looking for help and are often in need. It has been shown that inspirational hope as well as pride can emote positivity and promote well-being. I believe the American flag can give hope and encouragement to our citizens. Therefore, I propose that a new American flag and possibly a Cowlitz County flag be displayed in the entrance lobby of the HHS building.
And if those of you don't know, that's the Cowlitz County Health Department. That's really what it is.
And would anybody like to discuss that?
Well, I agree with you. It's a board member. I think it is very inspiring and I don't have a problem with that at all.
This is an interesting process in that the chairman of the board has offered a suggestion to HHS. Is that a binding suggestion? The answer is no. Does he want to make it a binding suggestion? I'm just talking in process generalities. Then a different process needs to be followed.
It's not binding, I suppose. However, I did consult with the directors of HHS and they were on board with that idea.
I have no problem with it. It just, at some point, there will be something you'd like done. And it goes back to the question of, does the board have any leverage or control over a resource or an agent, an internal agency like HHS? And that would go to the main board and the board of county commissioners.
So maybe this board would request that we send it over to the Board of Commissioners for,
In this specific case, don't go to bureaucracy if you don't need to. HHS, if they object, they can bring it up. But I'm not objecting. Is anybody here objecting?
No, I'd like to make a
So
motion.
it's kind of a moot point, I think.
the only thing that crossed my mind is the cost of the actual flag. And that, I don't know if that needs to be brought up for a vote then.
I think probably Carol Harrison knows exactly how to handle that. Am I right?
Would you like to step up, Carol?
Oh, I'll be right with you. I know I heard it.
So
Hey,
you-
Kelly,
Yes,
I hate to do this, but I have another meeting I need to run to, so you guys are gonna have to finish without me.
thank you very much, Mary Jane, for you coming.
You take care.
Thank
You bet. You guys take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good morning.
Good
Carol
morning,
Harrison, Director of Cowlitz County Health and Human Services. We don't have any objections. I honestly don't know what a flag costs, but I'm sure it's not terrible and, it's completely doable. We could put something in our lobby. Do we have a Cowlitz County flag? I don't know if I've ever seen one.
Isn't the one back there?
Is that white one not?
The white one.
Like here's a Cowlitz County flag. Yeah. Yeah. It's a lobster.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it's Washington.
That'd be nice.
That one before.
Buying a flag wouldn't be too expensive, but trying to have the chairman stand there holding it up.
Right?
I was just wondering if you guys decided you could share it with us before you make your final decision, as I have this thing about flags. And what started, make a long story short, my niece graduated from Western Washington University, got the commencement booklet and went through it because I was trying to figure out everything about what they were wearing, all the symbols, everything. And I read that book and I was like, oh my word. Anyway, it's very interesting to know what every little detail means on every flag. So that's why I would like to see it, the public to see what you come up with or help. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
With you?
So I think we can just move on without a vote onto that.
I think so.
Yeah. Thank you, Carol, for your help with that. I think it'll help a little bit. There's a lot of people walk in there that are in need and looking for some kind of hope, and they already probably have a problem. American flag is pretty inspirational for most people, I think. Last bit of business for me is to appoint a vice chair. A vice chair is for, in case of the chairperson's absence, a vice chair would be able to take over. It's in the bylaws as well that it needs to be, and it's a good idea in case something ever happens. For me, I'd like to appoint the same vice chair that is already serving as the vice chair for the Board of Cowlitz County Commissioners, Commissioner Mortensen, if you don't object.
If you don't mind me reversing the order of the words, I'm good.
Am I reversing my words?
No, chair of vice.
Oh, Chair of
Fine with you,
vice,
thank you.
vice chair, chair of vice. So therefore I appoint Commissioner Mortensen to be the vice chair of this Board of Health. And then the last thing, then I'll open for further comments if there is any. But I'd like to call another meeting. It's gonna be, the clerk is telling me somewhere between the end of February or the end of March. It's not determined yet, the date, but we will set a meeting for a convenient time for everybody that can do that. And we will do some committee work at that point.
Yeah, there has been in the past in actuality, we've met on Tuesdays. I think that's impractical because, you've got to get squeezed in, so I'm hoping that you'll do something other than a Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm open. I've talked with the clerks back and forth, and we've been trying to find a better date, better time to meet. So we'll work on that as well. I don't want to alienate the morning public is what I'm a little worried about if we do a meeting at 1:30, 2:30 in the afternoon. I'm not sure if the public would be into that, but we'll have to ask around. Any further comments for public, please?
I think that's a wonderful suggestion about putting a flag in the health department office. I was wondering if that may be something where you could solicit donations from the public to provide the funding for that.
Wow, that's, yeah. Kind of leaves me a little speechless when here for a government board, handing out a lot of money, not the Board of Health, but the Board of Commissioners. And here's someone from the public offering to donate towards the American flag. That's pretty amazing. And you just basically what I thought was a very small idea. It's probably more important than I even think.
Carol, can that happen? Can people donate to a government agency? Is there any RCWs? Okay, I think that makes a nice campaign.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's great.
Great idea.
Thank you, Kelly, for that suggestion. I was going to say the same thing as Rob. We could do a donation. I'd be happy to contribute. I just wondered that if any of the comments down below that I've seen come through are contributions to our discussion. That's all I had to say.
Commissioner Martinson, are there comments that have come in online that need to be?
Part of the time when you've seen me drift off a little bit is I'm trying to read and manage that at the same time, and I'm not sure how to answer that. Sorry. You do have a hand up, or you did have a hand up.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
But
Hi, hello.
It was Lisa Templeton who had her hand up, and she's now.
Good morning. What a pleasure to be before you. And I wanted to say thank you, members of the board, for having your cameras on. How refreshing. My name is Lisa Templeton, and I'm a member of the board of Informed Choice Washington. I also wanted to express my appreciation for the sentiments voiced this morning regarding our personal freedom. I am here to tell you about a bill. By the way, how much time do I have?
couple few minutes.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to let you know that our organization, Informed Choice Washington, is going to be dropping a bill in the legislature here, maybe today, coming up very soon. Our organization, Informed Choice Washington, is a nonprofit. We've been here since 2015, advocating for vaccine policy reform, for scientific integrity, for healthy immunity, and for informed consent. Did you know that last Monday, January 9th, the Board of Health, the State Board of Health, indicated that one of their top 3 New Year's resolutions for 2023 was to rebuild trust in public health. So they recognize there's something lacking there. You can watch the replay on TVW if you want. So today I want to tell you about our bill and how the purpose of it is to do exactly that, to rebuild trust through rebuild public trust in public health. And our bill already has bipartisan support, which is exciting. And it makes sense because everybody wants to be able to rely on statements from our governmental agencies and be able to believe that they are the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So it's a two-pronged approach to our bill, conflict of interest, and then also promotional communications regarding drugs, vaccines, and medical devices. So as far as conflicts of interest, there's an appearance of impropriety when government agencies that set policy for products are also members of organizations that are sponsored by the manufacturers who produce those same products. One example is there is an organization called NACCHO, NACCHO is the acronym, that stands for National Association of County Health Officials. And I believe every board of health in our state is a member of NACCHO, including Cowlitz. And NACCHO's business partners include the most powerful vaccine manufacturers, Pfizer, J&J, Moderna. So I'm sure you see how this could cause the public to have doubts or questions as to whether public health officials and bodies are truly unbiased in some of their promotional messaging. The other prong I mentioned is marketing or promotion. Through the COVID crisis, I think more and more people are recognizing that there's some inconsistency between what claims manufacturers are allowed to make about their products, and then the claims and promotional communications that are issued by our government agencies. One example is our state Department of Health stating that it's okay to take COVID shots concurrently with any other vaccines, but they fail to inform the public that there have been 0 studies supporting this claim. Now, under federal law, Pfizer and Moderna could not make that statement. They would have to include appropriate qualifications for such assertions. This falls under the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act. And then these discrepancies between what the agencies are saying and what the manufacturers are permitted to say have eroded trust of government. So I'm excited about our bill. It will improve the Consumer Protections Act here in the state to require that Washington state agencies adhere to the same advertising laws that apply to manufacturers of drugs and medical devices. And it would also prevent agencies and their employees from holding membership in the organizations that are sponsored by manufacturers whose products are promoted by the agency, like the NACCHO example I gave you. So Vice Chair Mortensen mentioned what are the elements we can tackle. And I'm thinking these 2 elements you might be able to tackle within your board. And it would be exciting to see you take steps to implement these even before the bill passes, to further demonstrate to your constituents your dedication and your commitment to their well-being. So thank you so much for your time. Again, it's really been a pleasure to get to listen in on your meeting today.
May I ask a quick question?
Of course.
Do you have the number of that bill or did I just miss it?
Oh, nope, you didn't miss it. It's going to be dropped either today or probably tomorrow. Otherwise, I would give you the number. Should I email it to you later when it's dropped, or I could even send you the blue sheet?
Sure.
That would be
Either.
appreciated.
That'd be
Okay,
great.
I'd be
Thank you.
honored. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Interesting.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, one of the difficulties we have, and it may be a difficulty only in my brain, which is it is very difficult to discern what is good information or not, and what is legal or not, and what is legitimate or not. I cast those as 2 different things. And you just formed a policy committee, policy review. before, I think it would be a good thing to have that policy review committee meet with Lisa Templeton and HHS and work something out if there is something out there that can be done. And then ultimately, it may end up with a special meeting you call. We're supposed to meet only once a quarter, but I think there's reason to meet far more frequently than that, where we have an actual presentation. Your agenda is just a presentation by. And the reason I'm hesitant is I'm very strict about what is called science, and there are violations on all sides of the book. Typically, it's really difficult to decide what is real or not, so you follow the money, and that helps.
Following the money, absolutely. I think that will get to the root of the problem often. We have another person who would like to speak,
I just have one question.
please.
You said you formed the committee. The only person I heard on the committee for sure was Dennis Ott. So is that the only person on the committee, or are you guys on the committee with it?
No, he's the chairperson of the committee. The committee hasn't been formed
Okay,
yet.
so the committee's not
Whoa,
formed yet.
whoa, whoa, the committee, you formed it.
Excuse me,
The
the
membership-
members of the committee have not been
But
selected.
by a typical process, you would let the person that you've anointed as the chairman
Okay,
start
I
to
just wanted
work
to
out
find
those
out. Thank you.
details.
Do you have any details about how people will be chosen, Mr. Chairman?
No, not right yet, but the public will be definitely invited and welcome, as well as everybody on the board.
Thank you.
While we have, oh, well, let me let this one speaker speak.
Another member, please speak. Go ahead.
Good morning. I just want to say thank you for a lot of the sentiments spoken here today. You guys are all in a tough spot being on, the Board of Health. Article 1, Section 1 of the Washington State Constitution is very clear. The primary duty of government is to protect and maintain individual rights. And that's what I'm hearing from this entire board. So I really appreciate that. And it is a tough balancing act where you decide where it is to violate someone's rights. And I feel like you guys really have that in mind, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So we have David Berger on, and I'd like to take advantage of that. So I do get a nod from the chairman on that. There's been a discussion about the board and how you would grow the board and what would drive that. If David wouldn't mind, if he'd want to tell us what he has concluded, that would be useful, but, or he can let me ad lib that and violate everything possible.
I think
He might have
David
stepped
probably
away.
wants to wait on that one, I guess.
Okay, I'll just briefly say that there are discussions. So we have an invitation out for a member of the tribe. The moment the member of the tribe comes on, the interpretation of the law is that we have to add another elected member. Prior discussions you might have heard was that the number of elected members could not exceed the number of citizen members. But then there's been a review of that by our attorney's office, and they say, no, it looks like you have to have an equal number. I don't know whether that's legitimate or not, but it does bring up the discussion of how do we add another elected member? Well, it turns out that I think it has to be an elected member out of the municipalities. And I don't know what the process is of that. I don't know how we decide that. So I just thought I'd just throw that out for ambiguity purposes.
Well, it's Good, nice
Just
and.
an early
am-
warning.
Ambiguous, no, but we'll have to address that once we get a tribal member on the board. Last thing, I heard a sheriff. I'm not sure if it was from this county or the other county, mentioned that the Board of Health or the HHS department are the ones that are limiting the inmate capacity at the jails. The Board of Health definitely wants to use the jail to its fullest capacity. And so I have not said anything about that, but I'd like to know if anybody from HHS has had any communication with the jails? Oh, here, Carol, thank you.
So we wouldn't have a hand in limiting the attendance at the jail. I don't know if perhaps jail has some, I don't know if there's any like state guidance that they have to follow or anything like that, but we wouldn't tell them that they can or can't be up at capacity. There may be some other guidance somewhere
It's just
telling them that.
that I heard that a sheriff said it was the Board of Health or HHS who's
Mhm.
limiting the capacity.
Perhaps the State Board of Health, or not the State Board of Health, but the State Department of Health may have some guidance, but I don't know. We wouldn't do that.
Yeah, to my best of my knowledge, that hasn't happened here. I don't expect it to happen. But it is interesting because suppose the jail had a typhoid breakout or something like that, then I would expect the Board of Health and or HHS would be involved, but that would be a pathological circumstance.
Just wanted to
you
bring it
have-
up.
So Marin from the jail just popped on.
Mine just popped.
Hi, I was passively listening, so I didn't hear the initial question. If you could repeat it.
I just had heard that a sheriff had mentioned that the Board of Health or someone from HHS had directed or is in charge of directing this inmate capacity, or excuse me, the limiting of the inmates in the jail. Did that kind of anything come from, you heard
No.
that from the Board of Health or the HHS?
No, I have not heard of that, and that's not factual.
Okay.
And we are the only thing that we had COVID requirements when we had COVID quote unquote outbreaks in the past, but a lot of those requirements have been changed for us as well. If someone is positive for COVID, we're required to quarantine them in a certain way, but not anyone that they've been exposed to. So that is not really a hurdle for us at this point.
So you guys are operating at full capacity again?
We are limiting, the only misdemeanor we're limiting is driving with the license suspended. We're accepting all other misdemeanors and all other felonies.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to bring it up. I appreciate your input there.
Yep, no problem.
And I think that the suspended license issue is certainly not driven at all by you. It's some kind of judicial decision, isn't it?
It's a little bit of both. There's a lot of suspended warrants. I think it's a priority to keep our doors open for fresh citations. And the DWLS backlog has a potential to kind of overload us. And they're looking at, district court is doing different things with those and reclassifying them as infractions rather than citations. So they are working through that. Some states have already reclassified DWLS to an infraction rather than a citation. So they're kind of, the courts are sort of doing that already. At some point, you know, if we get enough input from the cities that they're wanting us to open the doors for driving with the license suspended, we could look at that. But at this point, it seems to be working the way it is.
Thank you for that. Any further comments? Looks like no. Well, we ran a little bit long, but we did get a lot of things done. So I appreciate everybody's time and help and just being here. And I thank you all. And we'll adjourn the meeting at 11:49.